You're listening to the Fusion Patrol podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Ben.
And tonight we are going to be conducting an experiment. We are going to be finding out if misery shared is halved or tripled. And in aid of our experiment, we've invited David to join us. Good evening, David.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back because we had an episode of Starlost that we knew you would just love to see.
Yeah, it seems you like. Yeah, I think I was here for Starlost last time too. So,
was that? Did we get you in for Starlost again?
I think we did. I think we did.
You are our Starlost expert.
I guess so.
Well, tonight's episode is episode 6, which is called "And Only Man Is Vile." In this episode, they've got famous guest star Simon Oakland, who was in everything in the 70s and 80s, as a scientist out to prove man is nothing but a beast, tooth and claw. And so let's just pick it up right there. Let's start with David. How much did you love this episode?
Well, love is a pretty strong word for that. I didn't. It was kind of boring. I actually thought nothing seemed to really happen.
Ben, how'd you like it?
Not.
Am I the only person here who liked this episode?
Well, let me clarify. You like this thing?
Oh, no, I didn't. It was a rhetorical question.
Oh, thank you. I was really becoming concerned.
Yeah.
Had this story been, if the setting had been different, it might have been good.
You mean like not on the Ark?
Precisely.
A lot of it, I think, was the dialogue, the way they set it up too. I think if it felt more like an actual experiment, dealing with our cast members and stuff, but it was just too much, why the whole time, and nothing got answered really.
Yeah, well, for the lucky ones out there who've never seen the show, this episode, Rachel, Devin, and Garth, a.k.a. Mustache, Long Hair, and Drip, arrive in a dome called New Eden. I think it's New Eden, or was it Eden Gardens? Eden.
I think it was New Eden.
New Eden. And there's a quote on the wall that says, "Where every prospect pleases." And Devin rightly finishes that quotation.
Identifies it.
"And only man is vile." And that's just for anyone who wants to look this up, that's actually not a poem, it's a hymn by Reginald Heber. And it's called "From Greenland's Icy Mountains" is the name of that particular thing. And it just talks about how great God is, really. From my quick scan of it during the episode, while people were asking, why? In this dome, our three heroes find an abandoned, empty, beautiful place with just food sitting around and everything just as if they were mysteriously disappeared into the Bermuda Triangle. And they come across a little girl, well, not a little girl, a young lady, who is first a terrified wreck, and later begins to sow the seeds of doubt amongst our heroes. Unbeknownst to them, Dr. Asgard from the Institute of Re-Education, I believe that, yes, the Institute of Re-Education, has been watching over them and is conducting an experiment because he is trying to prove to his colleague, a woman whose name I didn't bother to get,
Dr. Tabor.
Dr. Tabor, yes, that's it, that man is nothing but a vile animal who has no pretension of friendship, trust, loyalty.
Has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
No redeeming qualities. And
well, they should also say why he's doing this.
yeah,
There's the idea is to properly re-educate the young on board the Ark, with him believing that the Ark is going to soon reach its destination, and through this re-education, it will allow humanity to better survive.
so they need to get off the Ark, and they need to go right towards the hole, beat everyone else up, and survive.
Yeah.
And he's very dismissive of Dr. Tabor's assertions that mankind's real achievement comes through his religion, his art, his science, his philosophy, the greatness of mankind, as opposed to Asgard's more animalistic view.
Which, at one point, he makes reference to Earth, and there is some kind of implication that Earth's destruction, he seemed to suggest that man brought it on through all these negative qualities that he's trying to expose.
I don't know that I got that. I understand he was very dismissive of Earth history about being all nasty, but I didn't actually. You may be right. I just didn't notice it. David, did that come off that way to you?
No, I didn't sense that at all myself.
Well, we're not ganging up on you, Ben.
But is he himself? I mean, assuming he's a human, he grew up being human. He should know right there what humans are like, and yet here he almost seems like he's more of like an alien outsider.
Well, he does behave that way.
Well, now this story is. I won't say this is the first to raise these questions, but where the heck did these people come from?
Thank you.
Is he 800 years old?
That was my big question. He's part of this scientific group. How did they spring? How did this group come into being? Where did he come from? How did he get the job that he has now? We seem to be under the impression that
he was actually given this job.
Well, yeah, and that this is all part of a greater program on board the Ark, because at one point Dr. Tabor says, well, what if Devon is right and the Ark really is in trouble, and Asgard completely dismissed the Ark is fine. There is nothing wrong with the Ark. So he is fully aware of his surroundings. He's fully aware of the Ark's mission. Yet, given all of that, how did he get the job that he's got now? Where did he come from?
Is he a descendant of the other scientists that had this job 800
that had this
years?
Exact same job. That's the only thing that I can think of. And at no point has anybody wondered.
Or is he got a youth drug? Not the youth drug, but the anti-aging drug.
Oh, the anti-aging drug, like the kids have.
Yeah, they don't.
Well, maybe. But
he's got gray hair.
Well, yeah, but okay. So he's doing all these studies. Who is he reporting to?
And you'd think if he's been doing it for 800 years, don't you think it's about
700 from anybody?
755 years too late for them to start the education program, because he and Tabor are still arguing about how the program ought to be run. It's like, well,
yeah, I got that same impression that this is nothing more than an endless debate.
Yeah, and are they sitting there waiting for more and more people to come off the Ark into New Eden? I mean, are they telling us that there have been other people through here that they've experimented on before?
They seem to suggest that other people had come through.
And yet the people in New Eden kind of were like they lived here and everything was fine until the girl came along.
And did her deed.
And then made them all distrust each other. So then they went down into the tunnels and lived together.
Yeah.
So much for living harmoniously.
Yeah, I mean, if they were all distrustful of each other, then they would never cluster together again.
No, they wouldn't. They not in the slightest bit. They would all be afraid of each other, looking for any opportunity to kill the other. Probably.
Yes.
And we didn't see any children there either. Anybody younger than probably 25 or 30 years old.
Actually, though, the woman did say something because Devin is trying to convince them that the girl is the... And I keep saying girl. I mean, she's obviously in her 20s.
She's a seductive woman. Yes.
Yeah. Jan Brady.
Yeah.
Is who she kept reminding me of. Maybe Marcia. I don't know. Marcia or Jan?
Marcia. I can't believe I just said that.
And you did it so well.
I did.
Anyhow, he's trying to convince them that she's the one that was causing the problems and the one you left behind. And one of the women says, "Oh, well, we left her behind. She was so weak, and we all had one of our own." One of our own what?
Yeah.
Young girl? Child? It was an odd line.
It's a strange line. I kind of get the feeling that maybe they meant that each person was in charge of taking care of someone else, but still, it was just so badly phrased.
Yeah, it made me almost think that, at that point, that maybe she was like an android or something, and they all had, her themselves.
Yes. Now let's talk about this, the way this experiment is conducted. So our three heroes arrive, and there's no one there. They meet up with a girl, and the girl, immediately after she starts talking, starts to set upon them in an effort to bust up these three childhood friends who have such an urgent mission to save the Ark and are so devoted to each other and have had so much history of surviving and working together. And she does that by first, saying to Rachel, you can't trust those two guys, and giving her a gun. Which she takes the gun and she has this sort of like worried look, like maybe I ought to have this gun. No explanation whatsoever why she shouldn't trust them. She's in full possession of her faculties, such as they have ever been. She's arrived in this dome with them, and they've met this strange girl, and this strange girl says, "Oh, you can't trust them, here's a gun." And she doesn't immediately go like, "Pfft, what are you talking about? And I know these people, you don't know these people." Very strange.
Mm-hmm.
Then she tries on Devin. She gets all kind of flirty with him and tells him how Garth and Rachel are really in love with each other. And he says, "What makes you say that?" "Oh, I thought you were a clever guy." Like, again, he knows what's been going on throughout their entire lives, and she's a complete stranger.
Devin responds the way that they all should have
A
responded.
sane person would have responded like...
Yeah, he's like, "You're an idiot. Go away."
She tries to hand him a gun,
He refuses.
and he refuses. Which, in a way, is a stupid thing for him to do. Because I wouldn't trust her with a gun.
That's true. I would have had the gun to protect myself from her.
Exactly. I would have taken the gun and said, "Well, thank you very much," and tucked it down the back of my clothes like she would keep pulling those guns out of
thin air.
Thin air, just about an inch above the crack of the rear end seemed to be where she kept pulling those guns out of. She's doing a Captain Jack on us, I think.
Oh, no comment.
And then she tries Garth.
Oh,
And this one is absolutely insane.
This one was pathetic.
She sits down with Garth, talks about how she's all scared, and he says, "Oh, I promise I'd help you. I wouldn't hurt you, and I'd protect you." And then she says, "Well, Devin stole your woman, and that's all right. He's my friend, and she wasn't my woman anyway. She's got her own right to decide." And he said, "Well, you can't trust him. Look." And she pulls out a gun and she shoots a rock. And he's, "Where'd you get that gun?" "Devin gave it to me." And somehow Garth leaps to the conclusion that she gave the gun to her to kill him.
he never, he never even asks, well, how did Devin get the gun? Assuming that Devin really did give it to her, he doesn't even inquire that.
He did say he never even mentioned he had anything like that. Which, of course, considering the way they travel and the fact that they don't carry anything, and again, it just stretches credulity.
Well, especially when you consider everything that they'd been through up to that point. If Devin indeed had a weapon like that, you think he would have pulled it out and used it.
Yeah, he wouldn't have needed to give it to her.
No.
But but I think a lot of that scene too is just, when I was watching it, a lot of it was from more of a directing standpoint. I couldn't figure out if she was actually supposed to be hypnotizing him to make him think this stuff, or if it was just bad acting, or what
David,
it was.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things that was really bothering me about this episode. He was really behaving like he was being acted upon by some external force.
Yes.
Like at one point, he drinks some wine and he acts completely idiotic. Well, even more idiotic from that point on. I mean, he's already being an idiot, but at this point now, he's really just off, completely off the hinge. And when he sees that Devin's in trouble, all he can do is repeat this ridiculous mantra: "Devin's my enemy." And he's like he was not even himself.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of wondered.
So here's the question.
The question is, okay, was he being affected by some other means? And if that's the case, wouldn't that have a negative effect on this overall experiment?
Yes, thank you. That's where I was going. It's like, not only is this experiment therefore completely invalid.
No, it's corrupt.
It's because you're not proving man is vile, you're proving man can be hypnotized.
Exactly.
And only some of them at that. But on top of that, Tabor and Asgard are basically having a bet with each other for the future of the entire species. I think mankind's nasty, and if I can make these three people nasty, we're going to train all the kids to be nasty. And otherwise, we won't train all the kids to be nasty in school. And so they're gambling essentially the future of the entire
humanity
on
based on this
experiment
scenario.
that's false.
Right.
Because he's hypnotizing them. Or seems to be, and I agree. He completely seems to be hypnized.
He has to be hypnotized, because if this was his natural behavior, I mean, if this was all genuine, then he really... the title should be "And Only Man is Stupid."
Only Garth, anyway.
Only Garth, yes, because he's completely idiotic in this entire show, and it's a departure from everything that we've seen up to this point.
Now, there is one thing in the description of this, and I didn't go back to see who wrote this episode or
I've got it.
Learn who that person was.
It was written by Shimon Winsenberg.
Sorry.
I'm not joking. That's the name. Shimon. Shimon.
Shimon.
Shimon.
That's Simon when spoken by Sean Connery.
Shimon.
One of the things that I didn't like personally in the episode was Asgard's initial setup of this premise was that mankind was a beast red in tooth and claw, and then he turns around to Tabor and says, which is obviously more correct than your mythology of a deity notion. Which, to me, set this down at being one of those... Morality is something that he's arguing from the standpoint of animals have no morality. And therefore, if we're nothing but animals, which you could extrapolate being, you believe in that evolution craziness, then obviously we're just nasty beings. But if you hold the theory that we were created by something and are therefore created with morality, that's just a ridiculous notion. And that is such a piss-poor presentation of it. That is the kind of thing I would expect out of, a creationist to try to make an argument like that. That's really that's really the attitude you get when people are very dismissive of a naturalistic worldview. So I feel like this was written by somebody who was trying to make Asgard look like a straw man argument, and then set him up to make him look bad. I don't know if you took that, but that was just a backhand slap of a character sketch.
Hmm.
that was.
I didn't get that, but it's a good point.
So, let's see what happens in this exciting story. So Garth is acting all goofball-y, and then Devon goes on
walkabout.
He goes on walkabout in phase 2 of the experiment. Oh yeah, and by the way, he's very perceptive in this episode. I mean, the girl barely says anything at all, right? But she's in this sort of
And he knows that she's hiding something.
Yeah, she's all sweaty, and they're all like, and Miss is like, I think she's holding something back. Of course, he's saying it in a deadpan line. It's
just funny because when he first says it, I mean, I admit, I was buying the premise that she had been severely traumatized through something, and she was in some kind of shock, and which is why she couldn't speak. And I was a little put off by Devon's reaction towards her, because he came across as extremely unsympathetic.
And immediately the other two jumped on him,
which I would have done too. Give the girl a chance. She's been through something horrible. She needs to recover.
Which is odd because
even the more humane point of view.
Even the girl, even Drip is not behaving quite normally already. And so maybe there's something affecting them, a field. And so it's making Devon be a little distrustful of her. I don't know. I mean, he seemed a little out of character.
They all seemed out of character.
And the others seemed to jump on him too much. Yeah, okay, fine. He's being kind of nasty to the sick girl. But I felt like they were too harsh in their rejecting of his notion, too. Just kind of like, hey, we've known him a long time. We know Devon very well. He says this thing. I don't agree with him. But you don't just dismiss it out of hand and say, oh, she's, kind of stuff. So, is it a bad character portrayal by the writer? Is it what he's going for?
I would put it up to that. I would simply put it as
bad acting.
I don't think there was a very good writer's Bible that describes the characters, and and given the history of this show, and
actually,
some as to who the writers really were for these episodes, it's very possible that the person who wrote this just had absolutely no idea who he was writing about.
I actually have right here a copy of the writer's Bible for the Starlost.
David, did you give that to him?
And I have the character descriptions. Let me read them to you very quickly. Devon has a mustache. Garth has long hair and carries a crossbow. Rachel is Devon's girlfriend and a good cook. Now that's it.
Where did you get this?
I got it on eBay. And I'm quite sure it's very authentic because it's got.
And you would have the camera off right now.
H. Ellison's signature on the front.
I wish we had the cameras on now because I would love to see this.
It was only like $350, but I thought that was a small price to pay. There's some other exciting stuff in here about the computers and the shape of the domes and stuff, but for the most part, the character bit was what I was really interested in. We'll save it for a later episode. I'll have some more excerpts from the writer's Bible for this series.
I want to see this.
Fair enough. You'll have to wear gloves, of course, because it's a very, very rare manuscript.
Oh, come on.
David's seen it. He's just in the other room.
Yep.
See?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This had some great lines in it, though. This odd thing about it, so I liked some of the lines in this story. Like, for example, where Dr. Tabor is explaining, well, what about, the great things of man, religion, art, science, philosophy, and Asgard's reply, just cosmetics painted on a grinning skull.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was a terrific line. And then when it gets down, it looks like he's won the bet, and Tabor is, defeated, and Asgard showing her a mercy, which I think shows he's wrong, that he turns the screen off and, well, we don't need to watch it, And she insists...
that's completely contrary. I mean, if man is so vile, then he too must be so vile, yet he's not behaving that way.
And he's like...
He's showing compassion.
She says, no, if I'm going to ruin my entire career... It's like, at one point they talk about giving her resignation. It's like, what's she going to go do on the Ark? It's like, if again, we'll go work in the bridge crew? But she says, well, I'll watch to the last drop of blood. That was also a very good line. Stupid.
Well, he did start it off.
He did say it. That's right.
He did say it. He said, do you really want to watch this all the way to the last drop of blood? Yes. And she just simply, she gives the reply. And she quotes him to emphasize her seriousness. And, I mean, I have no problem with her saying it in response.
No.
I have a problem with him saying it in the first place.
That's what I mean. It was a great line. I loved it. I mean, it was just like, wow.
It's so melodramatic.
It's so melodramatic. That's exactly right. There's so many lines in this that are just so incredibly
over the top.
Like when Garth and Rachel are talking about, how this girl, Letha, loves him. Or he thinks, or maybe he loves her, or kind of stuff. And Rachel's like, you don't want a woman. You want a lapdog.
Well, this is coming from... Rachel has always had some of the worst lines imaginable.
Because she's a woman.
This is just another one.
Yeah. It's whoever was doing this was just having fun. It was like, I can tell you what it is. When a mother throws a baby into the air and the baby laughs because he knows, he trusts his mother to catch him. It's like, you know what this show needed at that point, really? It needed the world's greatest actor, Bill Shatner. If he had been playing Devon in this show, with or without a mustache, he could have carried off some of those lines. But these people...
I could see him playing Asgard quite well.
Do you think they'd fake his gray hair? And I thought that was funny about Simon Oakland. I mean, he's been in everything. He used to be Tony Vincenzo in The Night Stalker, and was General Moore, I think, in Black Sheep Squad. I mean, he's been in so many shows, and this time, for some reason, they frosted up his. It looked terrible.
For what point? I mean, what's the point? To just make him look like some sort of an elder statesman in this little team of two?
It's just more science fiction-y looking. I think it was more. I thought it was more silvery than it matches his silver outfit that he's wearing.
Oh, good point.
Mm.
It's color coordination because they're big on that.
Oh, aesthetics.
We were talking about Devon going on Walkabout. He goes on Walkabout, and Dr. Asgard traps him in an elevator and sends him deep down below, where the people of New Eden beat him up, conk him on the head and chain him up.
Because they think he's the enemy.
The invader. The invincible, indestructible enemy that they've all been warned about and that they're all now utterly terrified of. But then they realize he's bleeding. Well, they realize it because he points it out to them rather pointedly when they say, you people, well, I bleed, so I'm not that enemy. And they're all like, hey, you bleed. We can show people that the enemy's not invincible.
Oh, I know. It's just such stupid thinking?
We have found the enemy. May we burn him?
Yeah.
And while he's trying to explain to them what the real enemy is, they're taking sound bites from what he says and play it for Garth and Rachel to make it sound like
That he's turning on them.
That he's turning on them. I didn't even get that.
I didn't either. That's what surprised me. I mean, Letha shows just this one little scene of Devin trying to explain that there is no enemy, and Rachel responds. I can't remember what her response is, but she seems to say Devin would never say something like that, and Garth is, well, he's proven. He's proven that he's betrayed us.
Yeah, he says, I'm not your enemy, but I can show you who is the enemy. And that's where they cut the point off. And the Letha goes, you see, he's trained you. And it's like, I never got that. But then
I didn't get that.
No.
I knew he wasn't going to say, it's Garth and Rachel. He was going to say, it's mistrust.
Yeah.
Or it's the girl. Or
I got that. But...
Well, we can't expect Garth to get anything. He is totally under her.
Oh, he's completely... Yeah, he's under her spell.
So he decides he's going to go down and not rescue Garth, but capture him and take him back to Cypress Corners for justice instead. And money.
Because it's a bounty.
And Rachel goes along, and she still kind of wants to help him a little bit, sort of. And... they get down there and they're hearing what's going on. They've got this gigantic crystal anal probe that they're about to do something to Devin with. Somehow it's going to burn him. So Letha reports back to Dr. Asgard because Devin has left. Garth, long hair, has left. He's like, okay, well, they're going to kill him. Nothing I can do. And so he heads back for the girl. And she's making a report to Asgard. And she's all kind of...
She has doubts.
She has doubts because Devin had a sort of inner beauty to him and a sort of truth and a beauty of completeness is what she said. And, of course, Asgard is appalled that her programming has been compromised and, come back to base immediately for re-education. Your experiment is over, which is unfortunately the moment we see Garth's feet come into the picture. What experiment?
Actually, your assignment is over.
Your assignment, yes. What assignment? And she spills it all. She actually kind of spilled it all earlier, too.
Yeah.
When she was showing him the clip of Devin, she kind of said, yeah, this has been an experiment. What kind of experiment? Oh, it doesn't matter. Again, doesn't that invalidate an experiment that's still in process? Precisely.
Well, because as far as she was concerned, the experiment was all but done.
So we might as well tell her.
Well, what bothers me is once Garth hears that this was an assignment, it's like he's no longer under her spell. And it's like all his moral values have suddenly been returned to him. What?
Yeah. Just snaps out of the spell.
Doesn't make the slightest bit of sense.
And of course, he has a little talk with her, and she's all like, "Oh, I have no feelings. That would just get in the way."
I thought you cared about me. Oh, you don't care about me. Oh, okay. I'm okay. I'll be Devin's friend again.
Yeah.
So that would mean that his entire idea of Devin being his enemy was based on, oh, Letha loves me, therefore Devin's a creep.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
I think he's got that down, don't you, David?
Yeah, I would say so. But I mean, what kind of passage of time did you guys see with this? I mean, is it just is this all in a couple hours that this whole experiment or assignment is going on, or is this? Do you think it took days and days for this to happen?
At the beginning,
I don't think it took days.
At the beginning, I believe Asgard says I can break them in 48 hours.
Yeah. He does.
At one point, when Devin is gone, and Garth doesn't give a hoot, and Rachel's a little bit concerned, and Garth is like, well, what if he doesn't come back? And she's, why would you say that? Well, what if he was gone for days? Wait, how long has he been gone? It's like they don't know. It was an odd feeling of timelessness there. I see.
Well, which again then gives credence to the idea that Garth is actually he's either incredibly stupid, which is a little bit out of character based on past episodes, or he's under some kind of influence that is more than just power of suggestion. Which then again goes back to the idea: how valid is this experiment now?
Exactly. It just can't possibly be a valid experiment by any meaningful definition of the word experiment. But, and I'll come back to this, since we're portraying the scientist as a straw man of the amoral naturalist, then why not have an experiment that's you cheat on?
Well, I was gonna actually bring that very point up. It seems like, especially given, and I didn't want to bring this up yet. I wanted to wait till we got to the end of the story. But yeah, I got the feeling when it turns out that his entire idea is false. Tabor essentially wins the bet, and he refuses to relent on that. And he just keeps saying, no, there was a miscalculation. There was an unknown factor. He refuses to release his idea that he's right. And anybody who is that driven will go to any means to prove that point. And if that means cheating, then so be it.
But Tabor should have obviously known he was cheating. I get the impression that if that girl Letha had any power, that Tabor was aware of it, that she had it, so she should know that he was cheating, and so why would she be willing to go along with a bet on something where he's going to cheat to beat her? And furthermore, he's the boss. And when it looks like she's going to lose, he's like, well, I'll just accept your resignation now. Like he's going to honor his bet at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm still the boss. So you're wrong, Tabor. We'll just continue arguing about this for a while.
Yeah, and if they've been doing this, experiment on hundreds of people over however many years they've been doing this, you'd think she'd be more knowing this by now.
I got that very thought that this is an argument that's been going on for a very, very long time.
I don't see how they could be doing it. I mean, they seem to just have this dome, and they don't seem to have a clue what's going on in the rest of the Ark. So it seems like this is the experiment. The people of New Eden was the experiment, and then Garth, Rachel, and Devon come along, and they become the new experiment. So what have they been doing for the other 799 years?
This is the original crew.
Assuming it's the original crew, and if it's not the original crew, what did all the previous people do?
And who made this decision to suddenly to form this re-education institute with this with this idea of proving that man is nothing more than just a beast? I mean, none of this jives in any way.
No, and of course, it's such an absurd notion.
Well, that's why I said earlier that had this story it was an interesting premise, but had it not taken place on the Ark, it might have actually been good. But by virtue of placing it on the Ark, you've made it impossible for it to actually happen. Not like that, at least not the way we saw it.
And I'm still not sure exactly what Dr. Asgard was trying to get at. Let me expound here a little bit. His argument is that man is a nasty, filthy beast, and that human history proves that because it's filled with death and war and destruction and nastiness. And meanwhile, our counterpoint, Tabor, says, well, you have to look at all the things mankind has built and created and done.
Like an Ark.
Like an Ark. Yes, like the Ark, which obviously was a collaborative effort. And so he's arguing they are nasty. She's arguing they can work together. And his notion is that we're going to... And he disdainfully talks about how man is such a nasty
Yes.
thing. So what the conclusion is that since man is such a nasty thing, we're going to teach him to be the best possible nasty thing he can?
Mm-hmm.
Is
That's essentially right.
So
we're going to exploit these terrible qualities
that destroy the world. In our building of a new world.
But we're going to twist them in such a way to make them more constructive. I don't know. That's never really made clear.
I just see that his next step in the scientific experiment would have been setting up the arena and just having the two guys duel to the death.
Yeah,
that's the way it was.
Gladiator matches next. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's how we clean up the gene pool. That'll be his next one. This is such a poorly thought out, realized episode, and it doesn't make any sense if you step it forward. It doesn't make any sense while you're watching it. I guess we skipped it because of the way the conversation goes is how they all get out of this situation. After poor old Garth realizes that Jan and/or Marsha Brady is not interested in him, and that Devon really was his best pal in the whole world, he goes running through the hallways
at full speed,
hair flying everywhere,
with wonderful action music playing in the background. It was so dramatic.
And he arrives, and there are these 8 people, I think it's 8, unarmed, and he's armed, and he bursts into the room and kind of waves a crossbow at them, and then when they tell about how they have to prove that they're, that he's mortal, that he gets his old arrow out, and it's like, come on, cut me! It's like Rambo.
Yes.
And so
actually, Rocky,
cut me! And they won't do it because they're wusses. So he cuts himself, and they're all like, "Oh, you cut yourself." Well, I'm afraid there's only one way we can prove you'll actually die, is we got to kill somebody. So he's like, "Take me. Don't kill my friend Devon. Kill me instead. That will prove your point." And then they're basically exactly like Garth was when the girl demonstrated to him that she was being mean to him. They suddenly sort of snap out of it. They're like, "Gosh, you've shown us that we can trust one another and put our lives in another man."
Well, because Devon tries to make that point to them earlier on, and they just simply look at it as empty rhetoric. They say,
well, he is tied up. So.
Yeah, it's not exactly. He really is in no position to prove it. And Devon even tries to make that point. He says, "These are just words. How can I prove it to you?" And there's this one elderly, sort of elderly guy who seems to be the some default leader of this
collective of people who don't trust each other and won't work together.
And he said, "Well,
so he's the head of the Republican Party."
Oh, I didn't say that. Anyway, he just turns to Devon and says, "You can prove it to me that we can become better, that we can learn to trust one each other. One another. I can let you go, but you can't prove that to me." Then Garth comes around and through a demonstration of self-sacrifice, or at least an offer. It's like, "You have proven this to us. We can become better people," and thus goes. Not only has Asgard lost the argument regarding our three people here, but everything that he's built up to that point has now just been washed away.
Yes. Which proves that their 800 years of work has been wasted.
Yeah. But does he give in? No way.
No, they never do. They never do. It's all, no, it's an unknown factor. I didn't control everything in my experiment. There was some this, that, and the other.
And that is exactly how the episode ends, with him saying that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I
Which
guess
was just the cheapest of endings.
we don't even see them leaving, do we?
No, we don't.
No.
We see Asgard and Tabor, and Asgard saying, no, I am right. The experiment, there was something wrong with it. And then they get Tabor who says, no, it was 3 magnificent people from Cypress Corners or something to that effect. And end of episode.
Yep. So does he go on to go to another pod or something now to continue his experiments? Or
Oh, I'm sure he probably does, because he refuses to accept the idea that Tabor was right.
And he's the boss. So he can do that.
Yeah, he at least by being the boss, it gives him the authority. And now we're back to, well, who gave him that stupid authority? Because everybody else above him is dead. So where he got that authority in the first place is questionable. But it's the motivation that just I think is just pathetic. That I don't care what proof is shown to me. I know I'm right. That humanity sucks.
So why even bother?
Yeah. To
trying
what
to
end?
save the human race?
To what end?
So, David,
yes.
in 100 words or less, sum up what you think of this episode. And it's got to be more than 10. Haha, that makes it hard.
Yes, it does.
That's 1.
I don't feel that the episode was of the caliber of the rest of the episodes I've seen so far.
Oh my God!
You know, the bad part is I was counting syllables, not words. I don't think the episode. See, I got 3 out of episode there. All right, yeah, we'll take that. Wait a minute. Now I'm digesting what you just said.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like stunned.
Not of the quality of the other episodes?
Exactly.
Wow.
That just shows you how bad this one is.
Wow. Did you not see the Goddess Calabra?
No, I have not seen that one.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you'd reevaluate really fast.
Okay. Or the one with the kids that run the bridge?
Nope, haven't seen that one.
Okay, well, then that's hardly a fair statement.
I'm sending you home with the DVDs.
I've seen maybe 3 or 4 of the episodes, including this one now. So.
Oh. All right, Ben, here's your turn.
Okay,
Less than 100, more than 10, and we're not counting syllables. So.
I know, okay. Like I said earlier, I found it was an interesting premise, and given a better controlled environment, I could see, maybe I could see something of this kind of experiment actually happening. But given the conditions of the Ark, all its years adrift in space, a command crew that is completely dead, the idea of this kind of experiment actually taking place is ludicrous. Thank you.
Fair enough. I think that sums it up perfectly. That's about it for Starlost. Next week we'll be back to look at the 2-part Doctor Who adventure, the Rebel Flesh and the... Is it the Almost People?
Yes.
Thank you, Dad. See, that's somebody there. That's why we had you on, so you'd be able to correct me on my titles of Doctor Who.
I couldn't remember what the second part was titled.
I couldn't remember which one was which.
I knew the Rebel Flesh was part 1. I just couldn't remember what part 2 was called.
So that will be next week. David, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
I hope you enjoyed your opportunity to watch the Starlost.
Oh, always.
He says it with great hesitation.
We'll try to keep that in mind next time we're going to do maybe a Man from Atlantis. We'll bring you in for one of those instead, so you won't have to.
More great stuff. Yeah.
Well, I remind you all to visit us on our forums at fusionpatrol.com. Stop by our Facebook page and say hi, or give us a tweet, or follow us on Twitter. We're Fusion Patrol. or send us feedback at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. And speaking of feedback, we have feedback. I have a little audio piece here to play from our regular guest contributor, Simon, who takes issue with the reviews we have of some of this season's Doctor Who. So I will play those out. So for Ben and I and David, we hope we'll see you again next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
There we go.
Well, I was waiting for On Fusion Patrol.
On Fusion Patrol.
Cheers.
That's better.
Hi Eugene, hi Ben. I've just been listening to your episode on the Doctor's wife, and I'm going to take issue with your assertion that it's an episode without much substance. The heart of Doctor Who is, and always has been, this idea of a madman with a blue box. And the blue box is a key to the premise of the show, the fact that he can travel anywhere in time and space, and the fact that it's horribly unreliable and dumps him all over the place. And the kind of relationship he has with that runs through the show. It's always run through the show. So what this episode is doing, I think, is really just exploring that and taking it a step further. You can argue that everything in it has been foreshadowed. There's nothing new in the way that he relates to the TARDIS. As you say, Tom Baker used to stroke the console, and the Doctor has over time cursed the TARDIS and cajoled the TARDIS and treated it in a very personable way, and we knew it was alive. I think this takes it a step further by actually personifying the TARDIS. And even though that in itself is not new, that's happened in some of the spin-off media of the show, I think the way it was done in this episode was absolutely brilliant. It wasn't perfect, but the scenes that I just adored unreservedly were the scenes between the Doctor and Idris as the TARDIS. The Doctor accusing her of being unreliable and her claiming that she stole him, her thief, were all just so wonderfully written and so beautifully performed. And I could have done with a whole episode of that. I think that's really my issue with the story. The bits where Amy and Rory were running down the corridors of the TARDIS were, for me, slightly reminiscent of that episode of The Avengers where Emma is driven mad by a constantly changing house and didn't have time to develop into there's a sort of psychological story that was touched on there, but it didn't get a chance to develop. And that was the sad thing about the story for me, that there was a story of substance there in the Doctor's relationship with the TARDIS, and that could have been the whole episode. It could have been more than the whole episode. I felt this could have been a two-parter. And because that relationship between the Doctor and this crazy, erratic living machine is so key now, as it always has been to the show, that I think any new viewers, whether they loved or hated the way the story was handled, would see how substantial an episode this was in terms of its treatment in the show. What it really did well, I thought, was to pay homage to something that has been a key central part of the series since it began all those years ago, and to offer a new perspective on it, and to that revelation, the TARDIS from her point of view, choosing a Time Lord and stealing him, it was a new angle, it was a new spin on something that will let you, I think, look back on all the preceding episodes just maybe ever so slightly differently, not to change them or ruin them, but just to give a new angle on it. So no, it wasn't a perfect episode, but I don't think it's fair to accuse it of being insubstantial.
You've been listening to the Fusion Patrol Podcast, a production of Lone Locust Productions. Join us on our new discussion forums at fusionpatrol.com. Find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Username Fusion Patrol. You can also send us feedback by email at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. If you'd like to support Fusion Patrol, please leave us a review on iTunes. Fusion Patrol's theme music is Fight the Future by Amberwolf.
This comment's not so much about the Doctor's wife itself as its positioning in the series. Thinking back to the opening two-parter, while I disagree with almost every criticism you made of these wonderful episodes, the one point that you made that did strike a chord with me was the contrived nature of the Doctor's comment when he draws attention to the importance of the identity of the little girl and says, shall we go and find out, or shall we go off and have some adventures? And having seen the Doctor's wife, in retrospect, it seems like a missed opportunity. How would it be if, at the end of Day of the Moon, when Rory has been overhearing Amy telling the Doctor about her pregnancy, this happens?
No. Never. I'm never ever going to stop being stupid.
So, this little girl, it's all about her. Who was she?
What was that?
The door. It knocked. Right. We are in deep space.
Very, very deep.
And somebody's knocking. Now, come here. Come here, you scrumptious little beauty. A box?
Doctor, what is it?
I've got mail.
And so on into the credits. So we'd go from one breakneck pace story into another with barely time to draw breath, but at least we wouldn't have the contrived scenes at the end of one story and the beginning of the other, with the characters hanging around kicking their heels in the TARDIS. Just a thought.